Misha here, and as kind of teased and promised in a recent video comparing the HK MR556A4 and the LMT Estonian R20, also brought out my Taiwanese T91 rifle. It wasn't really fair to compare it head to head with those two. For one, those are factory guns, and this is a gun that I built, although from Taiwanese parts. And for another, this is a much cheaper gun, and I don't mean that in a bad way. The Taiwan military paid under $550 per gun. That said, it's pretty remarkable the piston gun they developed. And this isn't anything new. The whole idea of a short stroke gas piston AR type goes back to the 70s over there. So predating almost everything except for the Armorlight AR-18, which this was directly inspired by. There's probably some connection to the Daewoo K2, although that's a long stroke piston, a little different. So yeah, they're not newcomers to it. They have built hundreds of thousands of these in the preceding versions, even exported them. This has been what Taiwan has used to defend itself against communist China for half a century. Pretty cool, I think. So we are going to talk about it again, and we're going to shoot it this time, because it's been a little while since I've had it out to the range, and just kind of want to. We're also going to try different magazines, including the OEM mags, which I'm going to be honest, in the past, I've had less than great success with. But maybe today will be different. We will see. If you'd like to help support us, there's always Patreon. If not, liking, sharing, subscribing. You can also do a super thanks on YouTube. Anything and everything you can do, it helps and is much appreciated. With that, let's just dive on in. Time for the T91 Phoenix ammo, and I put the HK steel mag in. Give it a good chance. She did work, and she did hold open, so that's not a bad start. As I said earlier, I built this gun, and I noticed when I kind of did a history update video of the T91 T65 earlier in the year, I didn't really go into it too deeply. So let's talk about it. First off, this upper was done by T91 Tactical several years ago. It's all factory 205 parts, factory 205 upper with the rail. This is the M-Lock compatible forearm. You know, the original Wolf A1 imports typically had the polymer. Either one would fit. It does have the correct gas block with the small rail blob here, the bayonet lug, and most importantly, the correct profile barrel. Now, what T91 Tactical did, they brought over mandrels, you know, barrel blanks essentially, from Taiwan, and then finished them out, cut them down here to length. This is the pin and welded version, so the 14.5 incher. They also did the 12 and some others, and also 16 for people who wanted it. So it gives them flexibility. I believe the barrels actually came over as 20 inchers, so they could be even fitted to T65 and T65 K2s. They did pin and weld on the factory muzzle brake flash hider combination. Works pretty good. And this is really where it's noticeably better than what Wolf did. Not banging on Wolf. The Wolf A1 upper we had a lot of fun with, but it came with the kind of T91S style block, and the barrel was a little heavier profile. Yeah. And I don't know if they ever offered the M-Lock handguard. I've already done a rather in-depth history video on the whole series from Taiwan, or the Republic of China, as it's known officially. and Arsenal 205. So let's just have a little bit of the Cliff Notes version just to give the validity to this system. A short-stroke gas piston AR that's seen service longer than most any other on the planet. This all goes back to 1968 when the Republic of China, Taiwan, wanted to develop its own, at that time, very new 223 rifle. And for reasons that were their own, they didn't want to go with the direct impingement. They wanted to go with the piston system, they said, for reliability. I'm not saying they're right or wrong, but you get the idea. The genesis of this goes back to 73. And then in 75, the first prototype was unveiled. And then in 76, the first rifle version, known as the T65, which was the Thai calendar year of 65, was adopted and put into full production. And its production run would last through about 1979, building at least 100,000. This T65 was basically like an M16 A1, 20-inch barrel, fixed stocked, fixed carry handle, but it had a gas piston instead of a direct impingement or internal piston above. Therefore, it weighed about 7.5 pounds, not too heavy. It had a 1 in 12 twist, standard selector modes, built on an A1 style upper. There you have it. In 1979, the slightly updated T65K1 was introduced. It had a heat shield in the handguards and a few other little product improvements, but it was an interim step. Until in 1987, the T65K2 was released, which was analogous to Taiwan's M16A2. T65K2 with the mag we know works. Held up. By that, I mean it had a 1 in 7 twist, it had updated furniture, updated compensator, that kind of thing. And this would be the more or less standard version for a number of years. But the first carbine would be the T65K3, which appeared by 1992. In shortened barrel, retractable stop, you get the idea by this point. This would directly lead to the initial efforts to replace the T65 and T65K2. And there was a little bit of false starts, but in 1998, the T86, based on the T65K3, would come out. Very similar to this gun here, except it still had a fixed carry handle and a slightly shorter barrel, including the flash outer muzzle brake, just a hair under 15 inches. It still had a retractable stock, and it had a 4-way selector. And this was planned to be the standard issue, but budget cuts post-Cold War got in the way. Nevertheless, they did build almost 5,000, exported a few to places like Jordan, and more importantly, the Taiwanese Navy would use some. Honestly, the budget cuts were probably good. It bought them enough time because in 2001, the prototype of this would be revealed, and the big difference was it had a Picatinny rail, a 1913 rail, with removable carry handle, later sight. They also bumped out the barrel to about 16 inches, including the muzzle device, muzzle brake. It still had the 4-way selector, and it had a retractable stop. Now, the gun, as it was known, the T91, was adopted in 2002, the 91st year of the Taiwanese calendar, and would go into production the following year. And the Taiwanese Army, the Republic of China Army, would order over 101,000 guns initially, with planned deliveries between 2004 and 2008. This is a lighter gun than both the LMT and the Heckler & Koch, the 416. The carbine version here is roughly 7 pounds, give or take its exact configuration. For a piston gun, that's not bad. With stock deployed, we're just under 35 inches with this barrel. And stock retracted, we're a little over 31 and a half inches. Not bad specs for a gun that was standard military issue. Here it is with the mag pull in, just to show you it does fit. And this is the very M4-ish, but still very different carry handle. And that's kind of what you see here. A lot of the parts are very similar to American AR, but different. Notice there's finger grooves in here and a adjustable wheel, but not down here. It's an interesting hybrid, and there's a 1913 rail underneath. This is the version I like, but there's also this QD small sight. It's an interesting concept. There's actually a tube that runs through, and underneath there's two Picatinny slots that are just literally spring-loaded. Again, for like snap shooting, for quick acquisition, for something you can take on and off, you can use your cleaning rod to run through here. The gun, it's fine. It really is. But for precision shots, it just doesn't sit on very sturdy, as you can imagine, with being spring-loaded. So it's something you can keep in your pack and throw on in a pinch. Great. But you're not going to use this as a primary sight. You're going to use an optic. But the initial carry handle sight, yeah, this is a lot sturdier and more stable. Yeah, this sling. Now we're going to try it with just a modern PMag. Same ammo, Phoenix. Okay. Open again there. The upper, yeah, it came as a complete unit, including the pin and weld from T91 Tactical, but the lower I had to put together. So let's begin with the stock here. This is a true T91 tube castle nut. Notice it's checkered, but doesn't have the notches. Instead, it uses the old style holes. The stock itself closely resembles a Car 15 XM 177. I will say the latch is metal as opposed to plastic on it. That's kind of cool. And it has more of a ribbed butt plate as opposed to checkered. Also, it has 3 positions rather than 2 on the original Car 15 XM 177, although of course the M4 would go to 4, so it's kind of in between. It's still a relatively short throw, definitely more A1 versus A2. Fine for me as a relatively short person, but take it as you will. I like the pistol grip. It's very retro chic. It's not an A2 grip. It's got more patterning. It's a little wider. And it has a storage compartment, metal door, metal little wire cap there. That's cool. And the lower parts are actually a Taiwanese kit. Now, I have used Colt lower parts and other mil-specs in these. They all fit fine. There's no problem. But, you know, if you're going to do it, do it. And this lower here came over as an 80%er from Taiwan. So these are not replica markings. They are original. Now these came in, you know, in the white. And they came in without any of this machined out back here, your trigger control bits and bobs. Now notice how there's no selector stops. You know, on a lot of your semi-automatic Colts, they just machined them off. But on this, they're actually intentional, and on the military guns too. Love the gun. Do not love the sling. As you did. Open. Not bad. Because we have a 4-way selector. 1. Up. And then over to safe. And back to the single shot fire mode. Now, the auto and the burst are blocked off. It doesn't do anything. It's just there for the cosmetics of it. My gun, I did it. I thought that was kind of a cool feature. The Daewoo's we got, the K2s and stuff, they had a rotatable selector like that too. It's kind of neat to be able to go either direction, I think. And on a military gun, with 4 positions, it's nice to have that degree of separation. One reason I really like this lower, and one criticism I have of a lot of the US-made Taiwanese lowers, they go to all the trouble of replicating the Cantonese, it's Mandarin, sorry, can't see it, not to mention I don't speak either one, markings on the magwell. Cool. But they do it on an A2 lower. The T65, the T65K2, the T91 are on A1 spec lowers. Obviously the difference is namely in this hinge pin and back here. It just bothers me. It wouldn't bother me if someone just built it on a standard A2, you know, whatever, Aero Precision, of course they're gone now, and went with that. But if you're going to go to the trouble of replicating the markings, do them on the right spec receiver. This isn't the year 2000. Finding retro A1 type lowers is not that difficult. So I'm just one of those, if you're going to go to the trouble of doing a job, do it right, do it to the best of your ability. Just my opinion, but it's, I guess, kind of what you're here for. I had a lot of fun doing this build. I had a lot of fun working with T91 Tactical. I had a lot of fun working with Wolf before them. I did not get this stuff given to me. I bought it. And a lot of it I put together. Obviously, I asked a friend to finish out, put on the lower. Hopefully it matches reasonably well. What do you do? Also note that there's not just a lack of RAS deflector, but, you know, no forward assist here on the upper. Very slab side, very, you know, you would think SP1, but then it's a pick rail. This whole thing is just quite interesting. And T91 did offer kind of an enhanced buffer that interfaces with it. I didn't use it on this one. It just doesn't seem necessary to have the anti-tilt buffer. I've never had tilting problems with this gun. Your mileage may vary, though. I guess that's maybe why I like them so much. I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot doing the build. Best surplus mag. There we go. It's really difficult to compare this to the Estonian or the HK, sincerely. They're just different levels. However, one area where the T91 definitely beats them both is weight. This is a very svelte gun, especially if you take off this ridiculous sling. Yeah, it's one of the lightest military-grade piston guns I've ever picked up. Noticeably lighter than either one. The barrel is a little thinner, but it's not crazy thin. You know, it's short, but not crazy short. And this is with the carry handle on. If you took it off and put on the small sight, you'd even save some more weight. So we got to give credit there. Very standard, familiar AR controls. This M-Lock handguard is cool. I still wouldn't mind finding a polymer one to go back and forth, because I just tend to run more retro like that. But, you know, it's how this upper came, and I'm not going to complain about it. Again, at least it does have a bayonet lug. And we got the bayonet. Taiwanese mil-spec bayonet lug. And it is, for all intents and purposes, Stenag. So here we have a 60s era BOC bayonet. Get it on here. There we go. It fits, but notice how the ears kind of stick out a bit. It's like it's meant for it, but not quite. See? That's because the Thai issue bayonet is very similar, but unique. And here it is. I also picked this up from T91 Tactical years ago. And notice if it's with the appropriate amount of play, you don't want a bayonet mounting too stiff. You want a little wiggle for when you hit things, and it fits appropriately, fully locking in. And if you can tell, it's just a little bit different looking. If you can't see it, let's compare side by side, and I know you will then. Bringing our BOC back out, which is a standard M7. Here is the Taiwanese. Notice it is about an inch longer, a little bit more, and actually slightly more narrow. Pretty interesting. And its scabbard, of course, is longer, but it has a false tip that is polymer, not metal. This is not uncommon. The Eichhorn German bayonets have a polymer tip too. But it's just neat how they made just a little bit longer of a bayonet. Just that little bit more reach. So we've run it with kind of GI mags. What about its factory mags? They are unique. They have kind of a shiny finish. They are very lightweight, polymer follower. They do have these overstop travels. And they do have a cutout in the right side as well as the left. The problem is, not just myself, others too, have experienced less than great reliability out of these. I think part of it is they get squeezed in the receiver. The GI mags, even mag pulls, fit in this mag well fine, so it's not an overly tight mag well. But these, there's a little bit of squeezing to get them in. Sorry, YouTube rules, but you know, you can take my word for it. But once in, they do fit, and they do hold the bolt back. How do they shoot? And luckily, I do have 3 of them. And now, ironically, with the Taiwanese mag, which is the one that fits the tightest and crunchiest, the other 2 went straight in and out, no problem. Let's see how she feeds up. Yep. That is just kind of my experience with these mags. I don't much care for them. Yeah, that's pretty much what I expected. But we'll give it another chance, and we will try the other 2. Let's give the Taiwanese mag one more chance. Okay. Maybe it just needed to wake up. It did hold open. I believe that was all I put in there. Like I said, see how tight they are? Yeah, that was it. So they're cool to have for collectability, but yeah, so many better AR mags out there. After the Army and other military branches adopted the new T91, the Taiwanese military police would order over 12,000. And then, after their own domestic needs were satisfied, they would begin exporting these. Jordan, Kuwait, Indonesia, and others would buy sizable quantities. And from what I know, they've built roughly 250 to 300,000 to date. So not an insignificant number. And service seems to be quite well esteemed. This is a short stroke gas piston system, just as the original T65, but it is greatly enhanced, really with the T 65K3 and the T86, they really perfected it. Notice there's up here. To get to our gas piston, we actually press and rotate here. That unlocks this, and then you rotate this, and your gas piston comes out in what I consider a packet. Pretty cool. The spring and everything is located in here in the shield, and you can further twist and rotate to take it apart for cleaning and maintenance. I really like this, and I commented that I like kind of the front remove system when we looked at the Estonian gun too. Otherwise, our upper and lower separate. Pretty conventional. Really the big difference is the 4-way selector versus 3. Here is our bolt group. Again, very conventional. No spring-loaded pin. This is a Taiwanese group. Notice the taper at the back. That's to help prevent carrier tilt. And of course, we don't have a gas key as such. This is what the piston strikes. So they did what they had to. Also notice that it's not serrated for a forward assist. They did what they had to make the short stroke work, but it's pretty bare bones, I'm not gonna lie. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Number 2 mag test. And these definitely go in a lot stiffer than the American mags or even the Magpul, so that tells me they're a little bit, wider maybe. I don't know. Okay. I didn't put many in that one. See, they're definitely not drop free. At first I thought it was the receiver, but since all the other mags don't have an issue, I think they're just maybe because of the cutouts, just a little bit more so. Let's try our third one. And reassembly is exactly as you'd expect. Just rotate that in and then rotate this lever here to lock it in. And very secure. It also doubles as the mount for your sling loop. And yes, you've heard me complaining about this sling. This is the factory sling. Oh Lord, honestly the problem is it's just so long. What else to say? It performs very well for what it is. And it is a very straightforward, no nonsense, short stroke piston AR-15 derived gun. Number 3, and we'll try it by dropping the bolt on it versus charging. See how that goes. Okay. We did hold open again. So, better luck than I've had in the past with these mags. Just as with the original T65 rifle, the T91 has been made in several variants, although it's a little unclear what some of them are. For example, the T91S, I've read a few different reports, including having the different style gas block and longer, something heavier barrel. Also, some say it's just the export name. Take it as you will. There is the T91 CQC, which has a shorter barrel. It's, about 2.5 inches difference. A little shorter there. There's also the T91K1, which was kind of one of the first updates. And you had the T91K2, which just maybe most resembles it. Had the M-Lock handguard. And typically, your K2s had the sight. I'm trying to think where I put it. Oh, wow. The little cutie sight on the K2s. And then there's probably the most modernized version, which didn't come out all that long ago, the T91K3, which had an extended barrel life. Yeah, it had polygonal rifling. These were always chrome-lined, but the guaranteed barrel life was pretty on the first ones, 6,000-7,000 rounds. The K3 was said to bump it up over 10,000. Of course, this is just, guaranteed, not actual real world. And those are the major variants that we see of this here gun. This is a fun gun to shoot, and it does stay relatively clean inside. More like the LMT than the HK. I wonder if that has to do with the way the piston comes out and interfaces, because it's definitely more similar to the Mars style than the 416. It's not blowing gas back at me, even though it doesn't really have a deflector of any type here. It is just a single position valve. I'm sure they do run some of these with a suppressor, but I would imagine they have a different gas block or piston regulator for that. This is the infantry version. Like I said, there is a shorter kind of CQC variant for that kind of work. Pretty common these days. And of course, these days they would not typically run them with the carry handle. They would run them with, Aimpoint, EOTech. Maybe somewhat ironically, maybe even a Chinese copy of them. I have in the past, especially with the Wolf guns, but these two played around with buffers. I've kind of settled on an H2. I've tried heavier like H3. That seems a bit much. Lighter H's work, but seem a little thumpy. Yeah, H2 for me is the way to go. At least with the 14.5 barrel length. Longer, shorter. And of course, ammo type will matter a lot too. If you're shooting the weaker steel case stuff, if you're shooting like hotter stuff like 77 grain, you might want to go H3. I don't know. Just sharing with you, I've been shooting 62 grain, M855 spec stuff. Brass case. Working Jim Dandy. In fact, no real issues outside of the OEM mags. Even those started to kind of clear up. And circling back around to number 1, the one we tried out the other day. Wouldn't it be funny if this was the one out of the 3 that doesn't work so good and it happened to be the one I picked? We'll find out. We're good in there. Yep, that was held open. So maybe it just needed a little break in. Maybe there was a burr. Maybe it didn't like the heat. So what about today? Well, this has been standard issue for a couple of decades now, but it's finally, at least on paper, being replaced. Going back to 2020, the Arsenal 205 started working on its successor, and in 2023, the XT112, XT112 was first shown to the public, and then at the end, after about a year worth of testing trials, at the end of 2024, the military placed an order, kind of passed everything, and by April of 2025, a contract was signed to deliver at least 25,000 of the now designated T112s to the military between the years of 2025 and 2028, with scheduled introduction into service next year, 2026. Now, 25,000 of the new rifle will not be near enough to replace the, at least 150,000 of these in service, but it's a start. And it does let them kind of shift some of the T91s to second line units that have been still kind of using the older T65s, T65K2s, and begin the process. And what is the T112? Well, it's very similar to this, very similar weight and size, still a piston AR, but it has the modern features, kind of like the Estonian or the HK, ambidextrous controls, new polymer mags. I don't blame them a bit for going to new mags. Further updated handguards and sighting systems, just the usual typical modern features you expect in a combat rifle. So it's definitely not a revolutionary step forward. It's just an evolution of the design. It will be very interesting to see A, how the new T112 does, and B, if we get surplus T91 parts kits over here in America. So that'd be pretty cool. I'd like to see this gun return. It's a lot of fun, both to assemble and to take to the range. It did very well outside of a hiccup with its factory mag, which I was kind of expecting. We had no other failures or problems over a couple of range days. So, in conclusion, what do you think? You remember the Wolf A1s? Maybe you got some of the T91 tactical guns and uppers when they came in. This was kind of the talk of the town for a little while years ago. But I think COVID, much like other things, did it in. Then again, maybe I'm wrong. I am not everywhere when it comes to the gun world, so maybe there's been a resurgence of these in recent months and I'm unaware. If so, share it in the comments. And if you've done a build, I would love to hear what you did, how you did it, and how you like it. They are a lot of fun, and I think it's the best way, entryway, to get a mil-spec gas piston gun. But, you know, your mileage may vary. As I said at the beginning, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. Like to help us out, check out Patreon. You can do a super thanks. And if for some reason you missed them, check out the videos we did on the HK, the LMT, all that good stuff. And for more detailed history of this, search the channel. Not too long ago, did a in-depth T65, T91, but there wasn't new shooting footage for that video. And frankly, I enjoy shooting this one, and I just wanted to do it. With that, I'm hot. I'm going to go indoors. So this is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.